Yeah, so I'm between you and lunch, so let's make this fun. I'm a senior engineering manager of reliability and quality at WeTransfer, and I fulfilled similar roles at NS and ING in the past. So I've seen scale-up, enterprise, regulatory requirements, not a lot of regulatory requirements. So yeah, I hope to take you along on this journey of the business continuity drill. So before we dive in, I think it's good to get on the same page about some terminology. So when I talk about business continuity, we're talking about the organization's ability to maintain essential functions and services during crisis and after crisis. Basically keep the business going at all times. And there is such a thing as a business continuity plan. And that plan contains procedures, processes, role descriptions that will help you out and will be your aid during a crisis. And you can test the plan like that with a business continuity drill. So what's in a business continuity plan, you might ask? Like, I could project ours, but it's really, well, not good for presenting and might be a bit boring. So you always start with a purpose. There's some activation criteria. In our case, we activate such a plan if there's a particular outage that has been ongoing for 4 hours or more without a vendor-provided solution, and something that cannot be resolved through regular incident response, for example. There's usually roles and responsibilities. So in a business continuity plan, you will see that CEO or CTO will step in and will have to perform certain duties like talking to the press or just resolving the crisis. There are scenarios, the processes that everyone has to follow, how you can test the plan, when the plan needs to be updated. And there's usually, or in ours, there's some contact information of people we might need during a crisis. Because under stress, it can be difficult to find a phone number. So why run a drill like that? Ideally, you don't have to use this plan ever, right? A crisis or a disaster, we don't want that to happen too frequently. But at the same time, you want to be prepared if it does. And with this drill, you can test whether what you wrote down makes sense, and you can make sure that if the worst happens, everyone knows what to do. For incident response, you can do regular incident response. There's lots of drills you can run, and you can do that with chaos engineering, or you can simulate a drill somewhat. But simulating a crisis on production by taking down the entire system is super risky to your business. So that's why in this case, I would recommend to do a simulation or tabletop drill. So this is the different title for my presentation, because it is actually a lot of fun to torture your senior management with a drill like this. But I will tell you how to build a BCP drill. So I have created a 10-step program to business continuity plan drill greatness, and I will take you through every step so you can become a game master yourself. So first, you need to define what you actually want to test with your particular drill. And you can brainstorm. And for inspiration, you can, for example, read your business continuity plan, a bit of an open door maybe, but you can basically test anything that's described in your plan. Do participants act according to the role descriptions that you provided? Do people actually recognize the crisis when it's happening? So do they know when an incident meets the activation criteria? Do they have some of the plan committed to memory, or do they need to look up the plan from some hidden corner on their hard drive somewhere? Yeah, you can test anything that's in there. But you can also identify flaws in your systems and in your processes. You can, for example, check whether everyone who has a role or responsibility in the plan has the right user access required to resolve or perform some of the duties. In our case, we actually had our CTO, when we ran our first drill, we actually figured out that our CTO didn't have a pager duty account yet. which was a bit troublesome because that way he couldn't perform all steps from the particular plan. So if that's something you find out when preparing for the drill, then you can incorporate that in your scenarios and in your simulation, basically. You can also check whether all contact information is up to date if you're using a lot of SaaS providers, or whether people actually know who to phone. That's just 2 examples out of many. But you can also identify superhero engineers in your org. I'm sure everyone has a couple of those in their org, right? That you're always happy that they're around when stuff breaks. Maybe you can figure out what this particular person knows, what other people don't know, and then make that person absent during your drill, or make it part of your drill to test what happens if that single person who knows everything is gone. And you can read up on past incidents and drills, because does anyone here work in a place where all follow-up action items are always completed after an incident? Yeah, that's what I thought. You can basically check if people actually completed follow-up actions. So it can be a lot of fun, and yeah, you can be very conniving. So you then pick a scenario. They should already be in your business continuity plan. Scenarios could be an infrastructure failure, like data center down, cloud provider down, loss of certain core functionality, security breach. And you can take that scenario and then you can make it even bigger, for the sake of learning, obviously. So examples from our drills. For the first one, we ran a drill with a widespread infrastructure outage. But at the same time, we also took out the majority of our communication platforms and collaboration platforms. So Slack and Notion were collateral damage in that first drill. And it's really interesting to see how people will resolve a crisis if they can't communicate as expected. And for our second drill, for example, our company is distributed and we work with different time zones. And the majority of people work in the Netherlands. But we wanted to see what would happen if a crisis would only involve US-based participants. So in that case, we set the drill to take place, well, hypothetically, on King's Night. So not a single Dutch person in our simulation would be around to be reached because all of a sudden everyone truly believed in the monarchy and was out partying. Which made for a fun scenario, and you can also in your scenario make sure that some of your participants are not available for a period of time, like CTO can only join half an hour later, stuff like that. You can really test different things here. Choosing your environment. This is can be quite interesting. So you adapt this to your organization's way of working and your participants, but also how frequently you've run a particular drill. The choices you can make is you can run it on-site or remotely. Our first one, we actually ran it on-site while we are a remote company because everyone was around at the same time. And it was also easier. It was the first time we were doing this, so we were all sitting in a meeting room together. And we were doing this very tabletop role-playing game style, like Dungeons and Dragons, and I was the game master, and I had a stack of papers with printed screenshots in case someone asked me for information. It was fun, but it was also really artificial, and if you have participants who do not really believe in the imaginary land of a role-playing game, it can be difficult to keep them on board. So, you know, it was nice because it was our first time. The drill was completed successfully, but it lacked some realism. So for the second time, we made a dedicated Slack workspace that partly mirrored our organization's workspace. So it had like the same channels and the same, partly the same members. And people were able to message each other on that Slack workspace. They were also joining from video calls from their own remote working locations, and participants were also joining at different times during the simulation. So I guess that's in the bullet points here, which made it more realistic but also harder to complete as a game master because you have to watch what happens everywhere, figure out all threads and lines of communication ongoing. But I do recommend to go for the more realistic, effective route, especially if people really want to feel the sense of urgency and crisis. So next is choosing your players. You first need to define the roles and responsibilities within your organizing team. So in our case, we organize these drills together with the info security team. So I'm in the site reliability engineering team, and we organize this together with the info sec side of our security team. And together we split up. We have one person being the game master who also interacts with the players, being the C-level people. We also have some actors, people who play the role of platform engineer who can be called in. But we also have observers. A lot of stuff is going on all the time. A lot of panic going on, even though it's a simulation. So you want to make sure that you actually assess whether people are performing according to the plan. You invite participants who have a role description from your business continuity plan, like the CEO, CTO, sometimes acting CXO, in case the CEO is on holiday, for example, or your external communications department. That could also be part of your participants. And you identify which other participants you would like to include. This can vary based on the scenario you choose. If you're running a data breach drill, then it makes sense to include some people from your security team. It can make sense to include particular engineers. You sort of have to see what feels natural and who you want to include. So you can make it like a whole org-wide exercise, basically. And depending on who you're talking to or who you want to include, you can either brief them beforehand or ask them to join without any prior knowledge. It all depends on what works out for your particular drill. This is going to be the hardest one. You have to write a script. And some pointers there. It should include a participant briefing, including rules of the game. Like what, I have examples of this, a little bit later on, and then I promise, or I hope it'll make more sense. But you're basically creating some sort of escape room D&D style world during the simulation, right? And there's actions your participants can take or cannot. Like, they might be allowed to call people or not. They might have to perform all actions through a game master. Steps like that need to be included in a participant briefing. And everyone needs to be like 100% on the same page before you actually start the drill to avoid any confusion. You want to include a timeline in your script, is what we've learned. And it can be based on milestones or minutes. People don't have a limitless capacity to be engaged in a crisis situation, so we tend to run our drills for an hour. But then there are certain milestones we want people to hit to make sure our entire drill actually gets completed and we assess all parts of the business continuity plan. Like, it's no use for you as an organizer or as a participant if people get stuck on the first step, which is declaring a crisis, and that only happens after 15 minutes. So you sort of want to know where you're at what point in time. And what will also help there is to have prompts to get participants unblocked through intervention of game master or other actors or stuff like that. So an example there is in our business continuity plan, I think one of the first lines is, this plan needs to be stored on a local hard drive and a printed copy needs to be in the office. And usually it's all only stored in Google Drive, right? When we tested this the first time, surprise, no one had stored this particular plan on their hard drive. But we did simulate that Google Drive was down. So, at that point, as organizers, you can decide to, okay, sucks, they failed the drill, we put in so much hard work, but yeah, they haven't got the plan, so they can't solve the crisis. like I said, that's not very productive for anyone, and no one will enjoy that. It's not a test of technical capability. You want to make sure people can actually complete the drill. So in that case, we had an engineer, one of our organizers, just send the business continuity plan to the participants with a message saying like, hey, looks, we're in a crisis. You might need this. And then have them send an email, and then participants would be able to get that resource. And that's an example of a prompt to get people unblocked. And people can get blocked many ways. So this is like, you really have to think of all hypotheses there. And other example would be if you really want to test if your participants are able to do external customer communications and they forget about it completely, just have some angry customer tweets screen capped at the ready that you fake and that you can share with them. And oops, communications overload. There's so many people angry. Maybe you should do something. Like all that type of intervention can be done and should be prepared. So that's the screen captures. And people might also want to ask you things about your scenario, like, hey, what would Datadog look like right now? And if they would just go to your own instance of Datadog, everything would be running smoothly, right? Because it's all fake. Make sure you have some screen caps. Be prepared. And last but not least, it's also nice to have an evaluation form as an organizing team, so you can actually like calculate a score and compare results over various editions. So I told you I would show you some examples from my script, and let's see. I think it's sort of readable. Yeah. So this is just a segment of our participant briefing, where we basically limited the amount of communication platforms that could be used. Like you need to use Slack or Google Meet or email. If you send an email, you always include the drill organizing team, for example. So we would have record of it. Only use the dedicated Slack workspace we created for you. You can make phone calls, but then you have to tell the game master you want to make a phone call and why, and then the game master will actually tell you how the phone call would go. Stuff like that is part of our participant briefing. Then we have some individual participant briefings. Damon, our CPO, he would receive this message. He would be the starting point of this particular drill. He gets some context, like I said, about King's Night. Hey, it's this time of day right now. Everyone is celebrating King's Night. Then is mentioned, that's our CTO. He won't be available for the first part of the drill, so you won't be able to ask him for help. In this case, we really wanted to see what the CPO would do without the CTO present. And please check your Slack workspace and go from there. Similar individual briefing is we would also message a VP of engineering that he actually checked something in Datadog, like, oh, you were snooping around in Datadog, you saw this happening. Please talk to this person, to just get like some sort of natural flow of information where different people have different information when they start, which is realistic of real life. A bit about the timeline. We basically created like a checklist with the key milestones I referred to. So in our case, we really wanted to be an official incident to be raised in a particular channel. That's just how we do our incident management. We raise it in the Slack channel with particular information. So in case participants wouldn't have done this by minute 20, we would, as organizers, we would mark it as did not successfully raise an incident on our scoring form, but then we would still step in and say, hey, we think you need to raise an incident to just keep the drill going, because, without an incident, it's going to be hard. And here we would check what people were doing, and we have some notes in our script about who is able to perform what action. Because not everyone, for example, in our case, can update our status page, like the formal external comms type page. Examples of prompts to unblock. These are the angry customer tweets that we would simulate in case people would forget about external comms. Just examples. And I refer to graphs being ready, so you can also people can figure out impact of a particular outage. We would present something like this and have it ready if they would ask. So once you've got all that prepared, it's like a lot of work to prepare a good script. You actually want to do a test run. People are really unpredictable if they are put in a stressful escape room D&D style simulation. And it can be really difficult to get them back on track. And you really want to be practiced. Sometimes people dive into a wormhole of something that's totally not relevant. Or people do something that you forgot about that they can actually do. So we tend to do a test run with a group of engineers. People really like helping us with that because, yeah, playing CTO, come on, it's fun. And it will improve your drill. Then you run the actual drill. Be prepared, show up early, make sure you have copies of everything. Mute all your notifications because there are so many people talking at the same time, sending messages, sending emails. As I said before, really people know the rules of the game before they start. If you're running remotely or in a Google Meet, or Microsoft Teams meeting, whatever, it might be good to record it. It's easier to score and see what happened. Keep track of the drill progress as you run. Mark what milestones were achieved. That's why we had the to-do boxes, in our script, added. Make sure you have a way to communicate with your co-organizers during the drill so that your game master can actually talk to the actors, because sometimes you need to make choices on the go. So either you create a dedicated channel for that, or you figure out how to mime certain things. I don't know, one blink means danger, something. Make sure you can talk. And feel free to intervene or improvise when the unexpected happens. If you can't complete what you had in mind in full, but you still learn something that's still valuable, feel free to deviate. It's going to be an intense hour, so it's always good to allow for some time to debrief. People were stressed. They might ask questions like, hey, why did you put this in the drill? They might have made remarks while it was ongoing that you want to disprove or want to learn more about. Collect some first feedback and learnings while everyone's still fresh out of the drill. Blow off some steam. And then you evaluate with your evaluation form that I referred to, where you can score your participants. And you give back to them how they can improve. Take note of any follow-up that's expressed in the debrief or later on, or something that you've spotted, and make sure it's placed on appropriate backlogs. And it might be the case that you want to update your BCP. Maybe you picked a scenario that turned out wasn't so much of a disaster, or maybe a scenario was missing. In our case, we at first didn't have a scenario in the BCP about loss of revenue, and then during the first, extensive, prolonged loss of revenue, and then during the first drill, our CEO said something like, well, I care more about if these services are down and we don't make any money. And we were like, yeah, that's not in the plan, so let's add that. So stuff like that you can learn, in your drill as well. And then you repeat. You know the drill, badam-booch. Because you will learn lots, and building a building a disaster muscle is important. You can also include a different set of participants for the next round. So my takeaways, or what I learned, is that you don't want to turn this drill into a test of technical capability. Don't make it super hard to figure out what was actually wrong in a particular system. It's about the process, about collaboration, about testing the plan. Make sure the drill can keep going even though someone doesn't know a particular fact about some sort of Kubernetes configuration. Just keep it going and make it fun for all participants, because if you make it extremely hard, people don't want to come back either. maybe some of you have ever been in an escape room where it took too long before you actually received a hint and you were stuck for too long, or maybe that has only happened to me. Then you're like done with escape rooms for all times potentially. And you want to keep people engaged. Even a fake crisis can make people super nervous and act real weird. I think the examples I shouldn't share here, but I've seen some C-level people get extremely nervous and make weird moves. You don't need fancy chaos engineering. Like, I come from the field of SRE, right? So people are very much into chaos engineering always, and I would make the case that even by going the manual route, you can run a very meaningful drill. And it can also be a great tool to get buy-in for anything reliability and security. If, you play your cards right, you make sure your scenario includes things that you really care about, the flaws that you have identified in your system and you really want some backlog time for. Maybe a drill like that can help. And I think that was my last point. Wait, let me first go here. I actually wrote a blog post about what I talked about here. So if you scan the QR code, it will link you to that blog post. I haven't checked if it still works. I hope it does, but otherwise it's on the WeTransfer engineering blog. And there's probably stuff in there that I forgot to say on stage right now. And reach out to me later if you're still looking for it. And I was too quick to actually go back to the prior slide that says questions, ? Yeah, that's it.
Thank you so much. So I have two questions. Mm-hmm. That's nice when you're the host and you give the first question. So first, do you also automate things in the background? Because this seems very manual, and we know because we do this stuff for clients too, and then it's like, oh man, if we have to do all this manually, do you also have some automation there?
Like what would you automate?
Like automate maybe scenarios or stuff to push or...
No, we haven't yet because we run it once a year, or we have run it once a year because it's part of our ISO certification requirement. So we run it once a year and we've run it twice. So it's like no automation yet.
Okay, cool. And the other thing is that you said with the C level does weird things. So we had a customer and we did something and we put something up, and then somebody from C level said, "Can you make a picture, a selfie from me with my laptop that is hacked?" I was like, okay, you're very stressed out. Chill the fuck down.
Yeah, but sometimes they can also surprise you. So in our case, our CFO came in at a later stage in one of the drills, and I don't know, she was like, she should have chosen a different career into incident response because she was so brilliant and she knew so many things about all our systems. I was like, what is happening? Like CFO outperforming everyone.
Nice.
So they can also surprise you in a good way.
Again, finance. Again, CFO. Okay, cool. Are there any questions in the room? Okay, I'm going to...
Thanks for a great talk. I wonder, how do you deal with people in the drills that take a lot of space, by speaking up? And I mean, you say it's a collaborational task and people should work together. Do you do it afterwards in the personal interview, or do it during the drill, interventions as a game master?
Yeah, so if someone steps in and basically tries to solve everything him or herself and not let other people talk, that type of situation, depending on who it is, I would give them a nudge as a game master, I would give them a nudge during the drill, like, hey, we actually want to see how other people resolve it too. Or you can give them a timeout, sorry, someone's at your door, you have to get a package or something, you're now on the bench for a couple minutes. Or take it into account for a second drill or a third drill. That's why for our second drill, we had the CTO join at a later time, not because the CTO was that obnoxious, but because the CTO was very good at resolving our first drill, and we wanted to see how others would do it. And I want the CTO to be good at resolving a drill, right? But I want everyone to be good at it. So that's why we excluded him for a little bit.
Hi, have a question. If you have process-based goals, for example, that a certain CEO has a certain role, how do you steer those milestones with the information you give them during the drill? Like, how do you make sure also those goals and milestones are met while running the drill? How do you steer them on it?
Yeah, so one of the goals, I think, in ours is like the CEO has to be the liaison for external comms and has to make sure that if there's press outings that they're involved, right? So that's why we would feed like customer tweets or a newspaper email, like a journalist email. And then, we can steer it by sending that email or that message to the CEO only and then hoping that the person will actually pick up on it. But in some cases they might not, and then you note it on your score form. But like you can do targeted messaging and make sure that that's enough of a hint combined with the actual plan. Does that make sense? Cool. Yeah, I think I'm actually right now really in between you and lunch.
Thank you.
I'm still around for lunch at least and until in the afternoon. So, if you have more questions, feel free to talk to me. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.